مساء الخير جميعا وأهلا وسهلا بكم في حلقة جديدة من قضايا كندية. كما عودناكم نحن في فترة الانتخابات، انتخابات أونتاريو، وكل حلقاتنا في هذه الفترة راح تكون مركزة على موضوع الانتخابات. زي ما قلنا قبل الانتخابات راح نحكي عن الكانديديتس وراح نقابل المرشحين من مناطق عدة. بس حابب أقول قبل ما نبلش مع ضيف اليوم إنه نحن بعتنا لكل الأحزاب الكبيرة بنفس الكمية، بنفس الانفيتيشن أو بنفس الدعوات، لكن طبعا بعضهم جاوب علينا، بعضهم اعتذر، بعضهم ما جاوبش بالمرة. فكل اللي عم نقابلهم هم من الناس اللي قالوا لنا إنهم مستعدين. اليوم ضيفنا اسمه تايلر وات. Mr. Tyler, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing very good. You're from Ottawa, and Nepean.
Yes,
Am I saying that right? Nepean, right?
yes.
Uh,
On the
so
west side of Ottawa.
west side of Ottawa. That is cool. So we just I was just telling our audience in Arabic that we were talking about the election this, and we were talking about candidates right before the election. So let's just cut into it. And before we start talking about politics, we want to know a little bit. We want to introduce you to our audience a little bit about you. Now, I know that digging you up a little bit, I know that you are a nurse, right, or registered nurse.
Mhm.
So before we start and away from politics, first of all, I think I speak for all audiences and everybody in Canada, thanking you guys for being like in the front line for almost 2.5 years now. I know that you were having a lot of hard time supporting people, and specifically in the peak times of the this global pandemic. So first of all, we thank you for your work. Away from politics now, we want to. That's why want you to introduce yourself away from politics, away from the candidate. Who is Tyler Watt, the human being, the health worker, the brother, the son? Tell our audience a little bit about you.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for those really kind words. It has been a really challenging, 2+ years now for healthcare workers, but for everyone in general. It's been tough navigating this pandemic for everyone. But just thank you for having me on here, and I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to be a part of your show and speak to your audience as well. So yeah, my name is Tyler Watt. I'm a registered nurse. I work here in the riding of Nepean, particularly with the geriatric populations, but my
Yeah.
focus and specialty right now is in physical rehab. It's actually quite positive because a lot of my patients come in, post hip surgery, knee surgery, things like that, and they go through an intensive 3 to 4 week program, and I get to see them get better and go home. So it's heartwarming, and it's fun to be a part of that healing journey for my
Mhm,
patients.
mhm.
But apart from being a nurse, I was born and raised here in Nepean, specifically Barhaven. I went away to university when I was 17. I did my Bachelor of Science degree in biology at Trent University. I took a few years off, worked at Starbucks, and went to go back to school where I did my nursing degree in Kingston. And I've been nursing for a few years now. Working the front lines during this pandemic has been really tough. But it's only
Sure.
motivated me more to be a part of the solution to fixing our healthcare system. As nurses, we're taught to be advocates for our patients, their families, and our community. And that's something that really resonated with me as a nurse and being a part of my community. So it feels like a very natural next step for me to bring that nursing lens and experience into government.
Yeah, great. So our colleague and of course the founder of this, Dr. Jamal Shaif Said Tyler, is a great man, and he's a superhero. We're proud of him and wish him all the best. So you've got one blessings here.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Just before we get into it, and I wanted just to get into the part where you get into politics, because I saw that you were an active member of the community long before you become a candidate, right? So what is your passionate about becoming into politics? Why did you wanted to go into politics?
Well, I think that advocacy piece that I was talking about before is something that really resonated with me, and I'm just really passionate about it. Day to day, I get to make a positive difference for my patients at the bedside, and I want to take that to the next level and do that for my community.
Hmm.
It especially in 2018, when we had a change in government here in Ontario. My personal life was affected, my education, the career path that I was entering into was affected, and I was seeing those changes happen all over the place. And I just decided to become more engaged and informed about what was going on provincially, particularly because I really care about the social issues, and a lot of that really falls under the provincial jurisdiction.
Hmm.
So I just started speaking out, particularly on social media, but also attending protests and organizations and events where I felt that their message was powerful, and it was something that I could participate in and stand in, with as an ally. I stood with the teachers and education workers during the 2019 strike that was going on with the Ford government. The cuts that happened to autism.
Hmm.
It is very powerful to exercise, your right to protest, your speech, and I think it's important that we advocate, peacefully, the things that really matter to us, and those social issues are something that I've always cared about, and I've really enjoyed helping be a part of that movement and voice, not only for my riding of Nepean, but for the province as well.
Hmm. And we see, I mean, this year specifically, this election, we see a lot of young people on both sides, or the candidates and voters. I mean, that wasn't very common in Canada. Basically, on both sides, whether candidates and voters were at least the older or the elder generations. But we're finding that it's changing. Do you think there's specifically after what happened in COVID and all of that stuff? Do you think that the political awareness is becoming more into the new generation?
I think it definitely has, especially because there's just so much at stake right now.
Hmm.
It's tough to live in this day and age,
Hmm.
especially for young people. There's a lot of people that are
Yep.
struggling, with the cost of living. Even the idea of owning property for many, including myself, feels like a pipe dream at this point. Not to mention things like the climate crisis. There's just so many, crises essentially that we're dealing with, that it's been really inspiring to see a lot of young people really step up in their advocacy, in their voice, and participating in our democratic process. One of the things that I absolutely love throughout this entire journey is how many young people have joined my team, and seeing how inspired and motivated they are to be a part of that change.
Yeah.
I think young people get a bad rap sometimes when it comes to voter turnout, and there are enough millennials and Gen Z at this point in time where we really could control every election from here forward just with the number of votes we have. But I think for young people, they need to feel inspired by the person that they're voting for. They need to believe that the candidate they're voting for, the party that they're voting for, understands the life that they're going through and are willing to do something about it. So when I'm at the door talking with young people, not even just young people, actually, a lot of families who are worried about their kids and their grandkids, for them to see, I'm 31, for them to see myself jumping into politics because I want to be a part of that positive change for everyone, not just my generation, but I really am fighting for the future of this province and this world. And I think that that has resonated with a lot of people, and it's really incredible to see how many young people are actually, getting out to vote, who are excited to vote in this election. And I really hope that we not only see that in Nepean, but across the province, in this election.
Yeah, since you started to talk about your writing and you knocking on the door, so tell us a little bit about your writing now. What do you think its needs, and specifically because we're talking in English, but this channel is most of our audience is in Arabs and Muslims. So tell us about your writing. What needs is there Arabs and or slash Muslims into your writing?
There is. We have a really amazing, Muslim community here in Nepean. We have two mosques in the riding. I actually just visited one yesterday and was able to, be
Hmm.
there during their afternoon prayer, and I was really honored to, be invited to speak after it as well. What I love about Nepean is that it has changed a lot over the last few decades. When I grew up here, it was mostly, farmland. Our population wasn't really big. We had one McDonald's on one of the main streets, and that was about it. Now it's massive. It's expanded so much. It's diverse, it's multicultural. It's really amazing, especially seeing just how much it has grown over the last few decades. And something that I've really enjoyed throughout this entire process, even prior to the campaign, is getting involved with those different, diverse communities. The Muslim community in particular has been extremely welcoming and gracious to me during this election. I really enjoyed the various Ramadan events, attending iftars and Eid, and it was, I think, especially great this year because for COVID for the last 2 years, these families and loved ones haven't been able to necessarily get together the same way that they're used to. So the fact that we're getting back to some resemblance of normalcy again was really it was really amazing and touching, and to see the joy again was really incredible, and just to be able to be a part of that was really special, and it's something I'll hold in my heart definitely for the rest of my life.
That's great. And so let's start moving on to the maiden. Since you're talking about your writing, now let's talk about the whole population of Ontario, because Ontarians, well, and I'm hearing that a lot from a lot of people on a personal level. Others, like specifically after those 2+ tough years, are getting somehow tired of the old promises and the same status quo and all of that stuff. So their their interests have been changing dramatically from last elections to this one. So one of their top things, and I believe there's a good reason for that, is like, for example, education. Like, we have seen how disastrous the education level became in during COVID. And because it's like we were not ready. I'm in a technology guy, and I was always telling people that we should consider online technology before COVID, and it could benefit everybody. But it was very slow. There was no movement actually into it. And suddenly everybody has to stay home. Education has to come from home. Nobody was ready for that. And it was a disaster. I mean, like, I don't have kids, but all my friends who have kids were like, this is a disaster. We didn't know that this education is that bad. And when it moved online, it became even worse. So I think this brought up like a lot of pain points for Ontarians when it comes to education. So what do you think about that? What is your plan on improving education?
It has been, really challenging for, students, teachers, education workers, families throughout this pandemic. Like you said, because we didn't expect this and had to adapt really quickly, there was a lot of learning pains and that transition into virtual learning for many that doesn't necessarily benefit everyone that's going, that's attending school. I think that with COVID specifically, we need to learn from this experience. If there's anything, positive that's going to come out of this pandemic, it's that we can reflect on the last, 2.5 years and figure out, what direction to move forward into, how we can better prepare for future crises, future health, pandemics, epidemics, etc. But it's also, shown us how we can work, with technology. I think that when it comes to education specifically, I don't I don't like that the federal government is running on wanting to keep mandatory online learning for high school students. I like that I think that there should be a hybrid option, and that is something that the Ontario Liberals are running on. Every student is unique, right? Everyone has a different way of learning, and if you do well doing virtual, then that's a great avenue for you to have. But it should be their choice and their parents' choice. It shouldn't be mandated by the government.
Mhm.
I personally would do terrible on virtual learning because I'm a very, aesthetic learner. I need to be in class physically and in order to actually take that in and focus. And I worry about what has happened, in terms of learning gaps and the mental health of our students throughout this, because they've been thrown in and out of virtual learning, back into school, back at home, the stress that caused parents, especially those that are having to work, right? So we can learn from what has happened over the last 2 years. We can use, the advancements that we've made in technology and its use for education and things like healthcare, for example, which is a fantastic, avenue and thing that we can use for increasing access for healthcare for people. But I definitely think that it should be the choice of the students and the parents, whether or not they want to do the online learning. I'm really proud though to run on the platform that we have when it comes to education. I think our entire platform really is about investing in Ontarians, investing in families and parents and students and individuals. And our education platform specifically is going to address a lot of the gaps that we have discovered and seen throughout COVID, but also, prepare us for the future. So, we're going to cancel Doug Ford's Highway 413 in Toronto. That has a $10 billion price tag on it. It's only going to save drivers about 30 seconds of time. I don't personally think that's worth our tax dollars. And we're going to invest all of that money into education. So we're going to get rid of the repair backlog in schools. We're going to build new schools, reduce class sizes to a cap of 20. We're going to hire more educators and special educators and resources so we can create a safe and healthy work environment for the teachers and educators, but also that will increase the quality of education for those students as well. There's
Mhm.
just so many different, parts of this that we have to address with their mental health, with the quality of education. In fact, we've actually introduced an optional grade 13 that we will be implementing if we form government. This isn't mandatory. If I was in high school, I probably would not want to go to grade 13. But I also didn't graduate. I wasn't going through high school during a pandemic, and there are students who reached out to our party to say, I am not ready to move on to university, college, or the workforce. Like I have not had the education experience that I wanted to have in high school. So we listened and said, okay, how can we solve this? Let's introduce an optional grade 13 for those that are not ready or feel
Mhm.
that they need, that extra year to focus on their education and studies.
Mhm. So, one of the things that you mentioned is also about mental health because everybody was affected. And one of the next topic and the next concern for Ontarians is healthcare. I'm like, I just want to mention that we have seen like a couple of 2 days back, we're seeing nurses like yourself who are protesting and all. And there's a lot of scenes that I don't like to see, to be honest with you, the way that police were brutal with them and all of that stuff, like and all what they're doing is just protesting because they wanted a better healthcare.
Hmm.
We'll come to police brutality probably later on, but those health workers were protesting because they were suffering through the pandemic, and we know that there was like a lot of demands that they have and they weren't realized. And we know that it was at some points in this pandemic, healthcare was a disaster. We couldn't fill up, you know, I mean, our like our hospitals were full, like really full, and we have to move some people with helicopters to other places in the province or even some other provinces because we couldn't fill them or find them a space in our hospitals, and that's all like that. I mean, I don't want to see that again. So what is it about healthcare? And since you mentioned mental health, what is it about mental health? Because we were not, I believe that the mental health pandemic is even bigger than COVID, and it's with COVID it became even bigger, but we haven't heard too much anywhere in the previous elections. Now we have to, because we're seeing that. So what is your plan on healthcare specifically when it comes to mental health?
I mean, yeah, mental health has been a crisis long before COVID. We often hear about the opioid crisis in the news and from politicians, but I would argue that the opioid crisis is often linked to and caused by the mental health crisis
Yeah.
that our society is
Yeah.
experiencing. And we have to address that. Your mental health is just as important as your physical health. Your overall health is complicated and has all these different aspects to it. And one of those things is your mental health. I'm glad that we are talking about mental health more, but we need action and not just, a once a year hashtag for Bell Let's Talk, for example. We need our
Mm,
governments to actually do something about it, increase access to mental health services, hire more mental health specialists that are available for the public, because right now it is nearly impossible to actually get any mental health care for yourself unless you have insurance or are able to afford it. For many, that is
yeah.
just not the case. It's not the reality.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, your mental health is should be you should be preventative with your mental health, right? You shouldn't reach a point of crisis like your physical health before you start to seek care for it. I really think that your mental health is just like your physical health, and it's something that you need to be looking after your entire life. That's why I really believe in the power of education. It's something that they drill into us as nurses, but it truly is powerful. And I would love to see mental health education more emphasized in schools. We need to give teachers and educators the resources and knowledge to understand mental health, recognize it in their students and be able to teach it as well.
Mm,
We need to teach students at a young age how to recognize mental health, how to understand it, and how to cope with it in a healthy way that is not, substance abuse, for example.
mhm,
So education is certainly a piece of that, but then we also have to address the people who need access to it now.
mhm,
That's the same thing with our healthcare system, right? Our hospitals are overwhelmed. Our system has been overwhelmed even before COVID, and COVID really just, shined a light on it and showed just how fragile this system is. This is a large reason why I'm running. I love nursing, but working in this healthcare system is really hard. My colleagues and I want to be able to provide compassionate and quality care to our patients, but it is often nearly impossible with the amount of work and stress that you have on. You can't. Can
uh, um, uh, um, you were kind of breaking up.
you see me?
Yeah, you were kind of breaking up. Hello.
Yeah.
Uh, I think your image is frozen.
For
Uh,
and how is it now?
it's still frozen. We can wait a minute if you want to log out and log in again.
Right back.
Okay. So just um, um, our uh, b- our guest, Mr. Tyler Watt, is having some connection issues. He's gonna just log off and log back. But I just want to tell you that he is the Liberal candidate from Nepean. We were just talking about his platform running for education, and then we talked about healthcare. And since he is actually a registered nurse, he was confirming that it's very important to improve the healthcare in Ontario, and working also better on uh, mental health, because mental health is a big issue, and it's like a big concern for everybody, since specifically what happened in the pandemic. I think he's trying to reconnect. Um, Hello. Um, Yeah, I can. It's still unstable, but I can see your image. Can you hear me? Sounds like there's a connection problem. So anyway, just to let you know, I think you're back. I can see you now.
There we go. I connected to my phone data, so hopefully that is. Can you see me and hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can see you and hear you better now. So I was just just telling the people, our audiences, what we were just talking about, summing that up. So yeah, go ahead. And we were talking about mental health and healthcare, and specifically, and you were talking about also the difficulties that we had through the pandemic, and you were up. I think you were going to tell us about how you're going to improve that.
Yeah. Apologize for that. The
No
joys
problem.
of technology sometimes. But yes, I think I was, talking about we can't just keep, slapping funding increases on hospitals and hope for the best and assume that the problem is going to take care of itself. We have to address why people are getting to that point of crisis at ending up at the hospital, right? Same
Mm,
thing with mental health. What can we do in the community, at home, in public health to help people stay healthy and prevent from getting to that point? Not
mm,
only will that alleviate the pressure on hospitals, but also the amount of money that we're spending, for healthcare at the hospitals.
mm,
So making those investments at the community level, making sure that people have access to family doctors, nurse practitioners, our focus on the prevention. These are all things that are going to help address the many systemic issues that we face in healthcare. That's why I'm so proud to be running on the platform that we are, because that's what the liberals are doing. We're looking at that upstream thinking approach to healthcare, and by
mm,
making those investments, we're going to help tackle, the crisis that's going on in hospitals. It's
mm.
not going to be a quick fix, but it needs to be done.
Yeah. Just before we move into the other topic, because there's also we're hearing a lot about these days in Canada and in the US, the Great Resign. A lot of people are leaving their jobs now. A lot of them have like moved their careers or because of things, but uh, our biggest problem now is healthcare workers leaving their jobs and going into different things because of what happened and the difficulties. And it's not just the health worker leaving their jobs. We're seeing a lot of doctors are moving outside of Canada to the United States or to somewhere else, which puts like even more pressure because we already had problems in in resources for healthcare, and now it's even worse, and we're still not completely out of the pandemic. So how would how do you think you can address this?
That's Thank you for bringing up this point, because this is the number one thing that needs to be taken care of, like, right away. We have to retain the talent and expertise that we have here, and that is saying thank you with action and not just empty words. So like you said, healthcare professionals are fleeing, they're leaving the profession, or they're leaving the province, leaving the country. So what can we do to keep them here? Well, we have to listen to what their concerns are, and we have to implement change for them, things that they desperately need. That's why, we need to repeal Bill 124, which is a piece of legislation that was introduced by the Ford government that caps all doctor wages, including nurses, at 1%. And it's not just about the wage, it's also about having the ability for my union to negotiate for us. They're the ones who represent us. They're the ones who listen to our needs and should have a seat at the table with the provincial government to advocate for the things that we need most. There's more that we can do for healthcare workers as well. The Ontario Liberals have promised that we will repeal Bill 124. We will give raises to healthcare workers, including a minimum of $25 per hour for PSWs, who are seriously the backbone of our healthcare system. And I would be lost without them on my units, and they need to be appreciated and compensated appropriately. When healthcare workers are working short, you should be compensated for that, because you're taking on more patients, more responsibility, and you should be paid for that.
Yeah.
And we know, that it happens all too frequently. Another thing we're going to do to say thank you is forgive student debt for healthcare workers that were working
Hmm.
the front lines during the pandemic. These are things that we can do as government to say thank you with action and not just call us heroes with an insulting piece of legislation in place. Oh,
Mhm.
and this is another thing too I want to bring up is guaranteeing mental health services for every healthcare worker. The burnout, the compassion fatigue, the
Yeah.
physical exhaustion that healthcare workers have experienced before COVID, but especially during COVID, is
Yeah.
something that we really need to address. And that's a big reason why people are leaving the profession. You know, people get
Hmm.
into healthcare because they want to care for others. And we need to nurture that compassion in people and make sure that they themselves are healthy and happy so then they can then provide that care for our vulnerable populations. But we need to address it right away because, like you said, people are leaving and we already don't have enough professionals and resources to care for the population that we have today.
Hmm. So moving on to the next topic is taxes. You know that we see a lot of the ad campaigns from other parties, and they like liberals are gonna raise your taxes to to balance the inflation and all of that. And taxes is right now is the greatest nightmare for most Canadians because they everything is getting expensive, and the salaries are the same, the wages have not been raised for a long time. And uh, you know uh, to to be honest with you, and this is what I'm hearing from people, and what studies are saying, like a minimum wage of $15 an hour is merely enough anywhere in Ontario. Like if you're living in the GTA, you need like $22 at least to live a decent life. So add to that, when people hear that taxes aren't going to be raised, it's their biggest nightmare. So what is your response on your tax plans if in case you win the elections?
Well, we're not increasing people's taxes unless you are a corporation that earns over $1 billion in profit per year, and that's
Hmm.
only going to be by a minimal percent. And we understand that cost of living is out of control right now. We are in an affordability crisis, and I don't appreciate the misinformation that certain people are putting out regarding our plan for taxes. We're not increasing your taxes. And there is enough money in Ontario that it just needs to be spent better. It needs to be invested in the areas that are actually going to impact people's lives in a positive way. And we know that when we invest in education, when we invest in healthcare, that comes back to us in the economy. So instead of building a wasteful highway that's going to benefit the donors of Doug Ford, we're investing that into education. You know, we're going to invest in healthcare. Um, because the number one thing that I hear at the door right now is affordability.
Hmm.
If you were to have asked me 6 months to a year ago when I was door knocking, it was COVID and healthcare. Now it's affordability, cost of living,
Yeah.
and then healthcare a close second. But that's the
Mhm.
most common thing that I hear at the door. And we need as their government, or hope to be government, we have to listen to the people of Ontario. And people are
Mhm.
struggling right now. I'm struggling right now. And what can do for government to help address that? So we're working to make people's lives more affordable. You know, we're going to remove the HST off of prepared foods under $20.
Mhm.
We're going to remove the provincial portion of several 10 cents on the gas tax, for example. These are things that we can do in the immediate the short term, but also the plans that we are running on are going to impact the future as well in the long term. That is going to ultimately help make life more affordable for everyone in this riding.
Mhm.
Sorry, in this
So
province and Nepean.
yeah. So another thing about taxes, because specifically from young people like you are, a lot of young people, I'm hearing them, and there's a point into it that they're saying even if you got taxes for wealthy corporates and all of that stuff, it's still not going to make a big difference because a lot of those millionaires or billionaires, and we have now a lot of them in Canada more than it's supposed to be, but they their their money is in a value of what they it's a wealth value, not an income value. And if you raise the income, then it's not going to make a lot of difference. And a lot of them are asking, specifically young people and kids, why wouldn't we put like a wealth tax? And I mean, like, not to everybody, but at least for some people who are too wealthy that they don't even. I mean, like talking about, for example, the United States. Jeff Bezos doesn't pay anything in taxes because he doesn't have an income. His worth is actually in his wealth or his his shares in Amazon or something. Same for Elon Musk and Tesla and all. So is there any, and I know we've met a lot of liberals, but they say that they don't have a plan right now for a wealth tax. But as a young person, and I'm hearing that, it would you consider uh, coming forward with something like that?
Well, one of my reasons also for running is that growing disparity and between the rich and poor. You know, minimum wage today and the average income that people make today, especially for the middle class, is not what it was, 20, 30 years ago. So we
Mhm.
have to address that because it is getting harder and harder and harder. I believe that we are seeing, parts of the middle class disappearing because the separation between rich and poor is becoming so big. It's really challenging for anyone to get ahead. Like, I'm an RN, I
Mhm.
make a decent living, yet I feel like I'm just surviving a little bit, you know? Y y 9 years of student debt, rent out of control, gas is out of. So what can we do to help, our middle class and lower class? And one of the things that we've introduced, in our platform is getting rid of the minimum wage and replacing it with a regional livable wage. So
Mhm.
based on where you live, the new minimum wage, which we are saying is the new regional livable wage. And I think that change in term is important because minimum wage today is not what it was, several decades ago. It literally is what people live on today. So we're going to be adjusting what the livable minimal wages are based on, where you're living. Like you said, it is much more expensive to live in Toronto than it is in some other places. It's really expensive living in Ottawa right now. So those are things that we can do to start addressing that, discrepancy or,
Wealth gap.
disparity between the rich and poor. One of the other things too is the Ontario Liberals have proposed a 1% increase tax on individuals making over $500,000 per year, which is going to help fund some of our new policies like removing the HST off of prepared foods under $20. But our platform is targeted on helping the middle class and lower class and the general population of Ontario because things are getting tough for people and we've heard that and we want to do something about it.
Um, so since you actually mentioned gas prices and groceries and all of that stuff, this was our next topic actually, is like the cost of day-to-day needs is getting hard. And we've heard like a poll a couple of months ago that most Canadians are finding it hard right now to put food on table. And don't no wonder. And that was even before the gas prices jump up. And now I believe it's going to become like even worse. Uh, what is it that you plan to, other than what you said, to address day-to-day cost of life for Ontarians?
Yeah, no, it's it's getting out of control, that's for sure. I notice actually how quickly things are getting more expensive, things that I buy frequently at the grocery store. I notice when there's like a sudden uh price jump. And, that's where we really need to come in and do what we can from a provincial level within our jurisdictions and means, how we can impact your lives and make things more affordable. We have proposed implementing a dollar per transit ride, for example. So, if you're getting on the bus, on the subway, any type of public transit, it will only cost you $1. And the province is going to subsidize the difference so the municipalities do not lose any of that income because they need that money, right, to keep the municipality going. That's one way that we're going to tackle and make life more affordable. Removing the HST off of prepared foods under $20, getting down to $10 per day childcare. and reimbursing families as well for the time that Premier Ford spent delaying the childcare deal with the feds. That deal should have started January 1st of 2022, but they didn't sign the deal until the very last day in March, before the deal was no longer going to be an option for them. So government should not be playing politics with people's lives, especially when it is affecting their pocketbook in a time where we are really in an affordability crisis. So the
Mhm.
Ontario Liberals recognize that that was something that should not have happened under the Ford government. We will reimburse families for that time wasted, and we're going to continue, to implement those policies that we can provincially to help make people's lives more affordable while we navigate, this new territory of cost of living and inflation.
Mhm. Now, the next topic is also connected to that because housing is part of the cost level that's getting up, and it's both for people who want to buy houses or even rent houses. And we've
Mhm.
seen a lot of evictions happen, after, I mean, like, not after COVID, but after the eviction ban because of COVID happened. We've seen a lot of evictions. People are getting out. I just saw a video about the called Tent Town in Kitchener or someplace. People are becoming homeless in huge numbers, and the thing is they cannot afford that, uh, even having a house or rent even an apartment. So um, I mean, like, this shouldn't happen in Canada, but it is happening. So what is your plan on affordable housing?
Well, I want to talk about renting, number one. I think a lot of people are stuck in that cycle, like myself, when it comes to renting at these, these very high prices right now. And one of the things that Ontario Liberals will do is we will bring back rent control. This is something that the Doug Ford government has not done. We will bring it back because we need to. We can't keep letting, these rent prices continue skyrocketing the way that they are, especially when we are in an affordability crisis. So we're going to protect renters with rent control. When it comes to affordable housing, we need to build those houses, but we also need to help people, especially first-time home buyers and young people, enter the market and get that equity in the market, right? And if you're stuck in that cycle of rent and you're paying someone else's mortgage for the majority of your life, it's nearly impossible to save up enough money to pay for the cost of houses that they are today. So we want to help people get into the market through, through ownership, rent to own, for example, creating
Mhm,
affordable houses so people can get into the market, and that at least they're paying their own mortgage.
mhm,
Young people don't need to have big houses and whatnot. We just want to own something that we are paying to off for ourselves. So that's the avenue, that's the realistic avenue that my party is going in, because we need to help people get into that market. And that's the first step of getting in there. So we have to build and create more affordable houses, but help people actually get that equity themselves.
mhm. Well, speaking of which, because you said like a rent to own option and a lot of that, but that's also because buying a house is based also on like a steady income and a steady job, and this is not what is happening nowadays because of a lot of things, technology and all of that stuff. But right, COVID has caused a lot of people to either leave their jobs, whether they like it or not. Right? It was a disaster, and they have in one night they've lost their major income, and they were living on CERB, which
Hmm.
probably is not actually, I mean, it's a good solution for them to live on, but it wasn't what they were. Some of them were like having to pay mortgage and all of that stuff, and they couldn't do it. So what is your plan on uh, fixing the economy, providing steady jobs, and working with the jobs that are lost for technology and all of that stuff, because we need to find steady jobs for people so they can have, be encouraged to buy a house, to be, because you have to pay for that for 20 years. If you don't have a job for that, where you might be going to be paying it from, right?
Hmm.
It's
You mentioned something earlier that is I think a key part of addressing this, which is you mentioned, the Great Resign, for example.
Yeah.
People are leaving because they're unhappy, they're overworked, they don't have a quality of life. So what can we do to address that? And I think part of that specifically really does come down to their healthcare and their mental health. So one of the things that my party is proposing, and I think that this is a really wonderful solution, is we're going to create a provincial health benefits package that is both affordable and portable for you. But 50% of workers, 50, in Ontario do not have health benefits, myself included. And if you have access to dental care, pharmacare, mental health, and things like that, then that is going to start positively affecting your life at home, your quality of life. I think that'll help, people's situations at work,
Mhm.
because they will be able to take care of themselves more. Um, so that's something that I'm really proud that we're running on, because it is a really big issue for so many people with cost of living being so out of control. We don't have enough money, to necessarily pay for our medications, or to go to the dentist, or to seek, mental health services. So we have to address that, that just basic needs, I think, number one. But also we have, very creative plans. We're going to start a 4-day work week pilot project, for example. This is something that I'm intrigued about, because I really want to see how we can improve people's quality of life. Another thing that I'm happy that we will bring back is the basic income pilot project. I've taken the pledge of supporting basic income. I think that this is another avenue of addressing that growing difference between the rich and poor. And it's really unfortunate that the Ford government went back on their 2018 campaign promise and canceled the basic income pilot, because we were seeing such great results coming from the pilot project that had already been underway for about 2 years. But we also would have been interesting to see how that guaranteed income for those people that were a part of the project in the various cities and areas that were part of this project in Ontario, how that would have fared for them during this pandemic as well.
Mhm.
How was this affecting their mental health? Not having to worry about food insecurity, or paying their rent, or paying for their medications, and things like that. So I think, a big thing when it comes to, keeping people at work, is to make sure that they're happy and that their basic needs are met. Of course, I want everyone to be working at a job that makes them happy, that they feel passionate about. That should be the ultimate goal for everyone. So that
Mhm.
also includes, increasing access to post-secondary school, whether that's trades, colleges, universities, whatever avenue that people need to take to get to that career that they feel passionate about and love.
Mhm.
So these are all these different avenues that we're going to take, so people have a quality of life and feel happy at their workplace.
Mhm. Um, One of the other things that are, I would say that keeps Ontarians, you know, wake at night is health backlogs. A lot of people that I know had surgeries that has been postponed for a
Mhm.
year or even more, just because, oh, we have COVID, our ICUs are full or something like that. And some of them are cancer patients even. I mean, like, this is when it becomes like you have to delay a cancer surgery because of a pandemic. This is way too much, right? I don't want to talk about the past. What happened has happened, but now we're getting, a little bit, easy. The pandemic is getting a little bit easy on us, or at least in the ICUs and all. But we still have gigantic number of backlogs. How are you going to address that?
Well, it's a massive problem, and the longer that this backlog stays there, and the longer that people are waiting for these surgeries, the worse it's going to be for their overall health, and also the amount of resources that we're going to need to address the severity of those issues down the line when it's finally their turn. So we know that this is a huge problem that needs to be addressed immediately. So
Mhm.
we have a fully costed plan of how we're going to do that. We're going to make sure that we get through it as quickly as possible, by providing and making sure that we have those resources, those professionals that are working around the clock, so we can get through this backlog. We need to get more healthcare professionals into into the industry so we can address this, right? We have to get rid of this repair backlog, so we can start to get back to any resemblance of normalcy that we have. But the Ontario Liberals have put out, a fully detailed cost of platform of exactly how we're going to do that, how much money it's going to cost, because we know that this is something that we have to deal with immediately.
Um, One other big concern is hate crimes. Now, we've seen that the amount of hate crimes raised in Canada since 2016. I don't want to talk about the reasons, but there were obvious reasons. But the thing is, I know, I mean, a lot of it goes onto the RCMP and the federal government, but we have seen some provinces, not Ontario yet, have put some provincial laws for hate crimes. I mean, like, because you can do that because, like in policing and police forces and all of that stuff, we see some of them have taken some action, which is good. We haven't, unfortunately, we haven't seen that happening in Ontario, and it's one of the most, the biggest population. I mean, it's the biggest actually, and the biggest rate of hate crimes. I mean, like right now, I work in cybersecurity, and right now there's like 300 hate groups active in Canada that we know of, but not a lot is being taken. Not a lot of action is being taken again for that. So you know, anything you want to talk about it? What's your plan for that on a provincial level, at least?
Yeah, 100%. And thank you for bringing it up. This is a very concerning thing. We're seeing this increase in amount of hate crimes that are happening in our own backyards. And we need to do something about it. It's not enough just to be against this. You have to be actively anti-racist, actively all these things, because we need to stand together as a community and make sure that these things are not acceptable in this province, in this country. And we've heard the concerns of people, and we have an entire section in our platform devoted specifically to this, because this is a growing issue that people are concerned about. Like you said, it's keeping people up at night. um, we're going to start by reversing the funding cuts that the Ford government made to anti-racism programs. We're going to better investigate hate crimes and human rights complaints. We need to make sure that they're also dealt with in a timely manner and done efficiently and properly. We're going to protect religious institutions from violence and intimidation. We're going to pass the Our London Family Act to create
Mhm.
new tools and strategies to combat racism. And our leader has also said that we're going to appoint a standalone minister responsible for anti-racism. So having an entire ministry devoted to this is going to, keep us working on this, continue speaking to various communities, key stakeholders, and learn about what we need to know and what we can do to continue, combating, these hate crimes. I
Mhm.
also, really believe in the power of education, and I really believe in young people and future generations. I feel that as time goes on, that more and more young people are becoming a lot more accepting, and we need to continue teaching those types of things in school. The power of education is really incredible. So by making sure that our education curriculums are being updated and reflect today, 2022, the society that we live in, this beautiful diverse society that we live in, it's really important that that is reflected in the education curriculum that we're teaching students. Some other things we're going to do as well is we want to help newcomers and refugees that come and settle in Ontario. We're going to fund community grants for newcomers and diverse communities, fund local and diverse storytelling, create standards of care for diverse Ontarians, and actually ensure culturally competent care is available. One of the things that I really loved in my nursing education was the focus on culturally safe and competent care. We live in a diverse community, and we need to, make sure that we are being able to provide the highest quality of care that we can. So I've cared for a ton of different patients, people from different backgrounds, different languages, and it's important to respect that and show that respect and knowledge as well, because that helps establish that therapeutic nurse patient relationship that we have when we're caring for them. And that's just so special to me, and I've seen it um, do so well in my nursing practice that I want to see that translate into society and education as well.
Um, yeah, that's so. Before we move on to the closing thing, before that, I know it's really like early to talk, but are you planning on coming up with a bill of your own or supporting a specific bill when if that if you got elected?
I I love that question. It makes me very excited. Um, but I don't have any specific ideas for a private members bill yet because if I'm successful come June 2nd, I will be the new MPP for Nepean, and I want my private members bill to reflect my riding and my community.
Mm.
So it will be based on those conversations that I'm having with my constituents and whatnot. So it will be something that reflects the needs of people here in Nepean for sure.
So I would like to thank you very much for being with us here tonight, and I will leave the last word for you. I mean, like, what's your message to Canadian, specifically in your writing, and to all Ontarians?
Well, just, thank you so much again. I've had a lot of fun tonight, and just thank you for the opportunity to come on your show and speak to your audience and have this really great conversation. It can feel like we are divided, especially when you are looking online. And there's been a lot of stuff that has happened over the last, few years that can really, make us feel that way. And, especially when the, convoy was happening down here in Ottawa. Honestly, I was struggling a little bit about, what is happening, to my society. But I've been knocking on doors for months now, and I want to share with you all that the majority of people are well-meaning, that they just want the best for themselves, their families, and their communities. And that has been something that has been very healing and therapeutic for me throughout this process because I know that humans are good, that our community is good. And I know that it doesn't always feel that way, especially when you look on social media, but I have to tell you all that is just not that's not the case. So I
Mhm.
want to share that message of hope with people, and something that I've really loved about this journey so far is seeing hope again in people. I understand that we are in such a challenging time right now, with COVID, cost of living, just everything that's been going. We just had a storm that just
Oh, yeah.
destroyed part of Ottawa and many parts of Ontario. And we're still, repairing from that. There's still places in my writing that don't have power. Even though there's so much going on in the world, there's still a lot of good. And I think it's important that we remember that we celebrate the victories and mourn the losses. But it's important to, keep our heads high, stay positive, and remember, especially when elections are around, that your voice matters. We're lucky to live in this province and in this country. It can certainly be better, but we're lucky to live here. And I encourage everyone who can to please get out and vote. This election is so important, no matter where you are. Encourage your loved ones and your friends to get out and vote because, there's just so much at stake. You've raised so many great questions and issues that are concerning people tonight. And there are a ton of candidates that are so passionate about these issues that truly want to work to improve the lives of everyone in their riding and their communities and represent the voices of everyone. That's my ultimate mission in this. Yes, I want to bring my nursing lens and experience to government, but I really want to represent the voices of everyone in Nepean, regardless of who they are, regardless of their political stripes. We're all in this together, we're all human, and we need that representation for us at the legislature.
Yeah, and you've just said a word that we always say. It doesn't matter where you vote. It matters that you go and vote. It's very important to show. It's one of our it's one of the cornerstone of democracy is to go and vote and show your opinion matters. And we want everybody. That's why we're doing these kinds of shows and showing candidates to give better picture for our audience to go and vote. I would like to thank you very much, Tyler, for coming here, and we wish you the best of luck in your running.
Thank you so much. And it was my pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, and have a good night. Thanks for our audience as well. We'll see you next episode with another topic, probably another candidate. Have a good night.
Thank you.